Hello and welcome to Narayana IAS. My name is Abhijit Srivastav and I am welcoming you today's episode of Daily News Analysis. So let's quickly navigate through all the important articles that we are going to discuss today. First article is Bombay High Court delivers split verdict on validity of center's fact-checking rule, that is in the page number 14 of the Hindu Delhi edition. This article is discussing about fake news and issues associated with laws and provisions which are intended to curb fake news. Second article is in the page number 6 of the Hindu. It talks about communalism. See, this article is political in nature, so we will be sticking just to the topic, that is communalism. Third topic is in the page number 11 of the Hindu. It talks about the great Indian internet shutdown. So what are the legal and constitutional issues that are associated with internet shutdown? We will be discussing. Fourth article is scientists fuse brain-like tissue with electronics to make computer. This article is talking about a new kind of technology that is known as brainoware. So we'll be discussing this technology. And last is why bird flu deaths of Antarctic penguin is flashing danger sign. So what are the issues associated with H5N1 influenza flu virus and how it is going to impact ecological setup of Antarctic region? So that thing we'll be discussing. So let's start this discussion. So the first article for today's discussion is Bombay High Court delivers split verdict on validity of center's fact-checking. This whole topic or this whole article is discussing about false, fake and misleading information. And this is related to a broader topic or broader theme, that is Article 19 enshrined under our Constitution. This Article 19 has two aspects. One is the fundamental right of freedom of speech and expression, that is under Article 19 Clause 1. And second aspect is under Article 19 Clause 2, which is a reasonable restriction. So every entity in our country has been given freedom of speech and expression, and sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, people are giving false information to other people, right? They are creating or generating false information and they are spreading these false information. And sometimes these false information have certain negative repercussion on our society. For example, 2016 US presidential election. It has been claimed that Russia interfered in US politics with the bombardment of fake news. Also, in India, it has been argued that various mob lynchings are being triggered with the help of fake news or false news. So government needs to curb these fake news and they have to tackle this menace created because of fake news. And while doing this, when government is coming up with certain guidelines or rules or regulations, people are finding these regulations as something which is abrogating our human rights. Right? So whether these restrictions are reasonable, or they are creating hurdles in providing human rights to our people or our entities under Indian territory or not, this is the basic theme or basic issue that we are going to discuss here. Okay, how this is related to our UPSC examination. So in GS paper 2, there is a topic Indian Constitution and its features, and which directly related to Article 19. Another is government policies and interventions for development in various sectors and issues arising out of their design and implementation. So government came up with certain rules and regulations, and whether these rules and regulations are curtailing independence of media or creativity or not. So this is also an issue. There is also concern. We need to understand the intention of government behind any laws or act or rules. So this also comes under probity in governance under GS paper 4, right? Let's understand the whole issue or the importance of whole issue with the help of previous year question. So in 2014, UPSC asked this question: what do you understand by the concept freedom of speech and expression? Does it cover hate speech also? So earlier UPSC was interested in hate speech, and probably in future they can ask fake speech or fake news, right? Why do the films in India stand on slightly different plane from other forms of expression? Discuss, right? To understand this theme, we need to see the context first, and then we'll see background. Okay, so context is there was two judges bench in Bombay High Court. Some people, namely Kunal Kamra, Editors Guild of India, Association of Indian Magazine, and News Broadcasting Digital Association. So these were the four petitioners who challenged 2023 amendment in information technology rules. They challenged in Bombay High Court, and two judges benches were hearing this petition. One judge is against the government's provision or government's rules, and another judge is in support of the government's decision or government's rules, right? Also, the basic issue behind this petition was these rules or this amended rules, they empower central government, specifically mighty Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and it empowered mighty to create fact-checking unit to identify whether certain information are fake, false, and misleading against the government's businesses, and which are spreading through the social media intermediaries, right? So this is the context. After understanding the context, we need to see the background first, and then we'll see what are the challenges, okay? So there is a IT Act 2000. These IT Act was enacted to give regulatory framework on internet governance. So there is the internet, certain businesses are being conducted over internet, and government wanted to give regulatory framework to these businesses. So they came up with IT Act 2000. Under these IT Act or Information Technology Act, certain rules were framed by central government, and with due course of time, these rules were amended. The recent amendment was done in 2023, and through these 2023 amendment of IT rules, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology was given unfettered power to create a fact-check unit to identify whether certain information are false or misleading against the businesses of the government, right? These rules have also one provision that if at all any intermediary is failing to abide by the direction given by these fact-check unit, in case of such failure, their safe harbor immunity will be withdrawn. Also, these social media platforms were required to provide technological solution to identify first originator of any information. So there are three basic aspects. One is government is deciding what is false, fake, or misleading against their businesses. Then they are giving direction to the intermediaries. What are intermediaries? We'll be looking in a couple of minutes. But they are giving direction to the intermediaries to brought down these information. Also, they are also mandating these intermediaries to have a technological solution to identify the first originator of a particular information, and these are the three basic contentions, area of contentions under these issues. Okay. Before going into these details, let's understand what are the difficulties in handling fake news in India. In 2018, there was a case Tehseen Poonawalla versus Union of India, and later in Tablighi Jamaat case, Supreme Court urged government or central government to brought up some regulatory framework to curtail this issue of fake news, right? Why? Because these fake news are often sensational in nature and they are having certain political, economic, or communal interest in the back end, right? But the problem is there are two types of fake news. One is harmless and another is harmful. For example, harmless. You may have encountered with this fake news that UNESCO has recently accorded Indian national anthem as the best national anthem. This is a fake news, but this fake news is harmless. There's no harm in this fake news. If we are making this fake news as criminal offense, or if we are criminalizing these fake news, so it will be not scientific and it will not be just, right? Because it's not harming anybody. But certain misinformation or fake news are harming people. They are provoking mob lynchings. So these are harmful. So we have to understand that these fake news can be of two types. If we are criminalizing all the fake news, so it will be unnecessarily creating ethical concerns over these criminalization of fake news, right? Also, there are certain concerns which are raised in current scenario. So what are these current scenarios or concerns over the rules that government has brought up? First is constitutional angle. There are two aspects. First is Article 19 Clause 2. This Article 19 Clause 2 talks about reasonable restriction over Article 19 Clause 1, which is giving us freedom of speech and expression. And this 19 Clause 2 is giving certain things over which government can put restriction. For example, sovereignty and integrity, security of the nation or country, contempt of court, public order, decency and morality, and so on. But all these restrictions are based on the consequences. The restriction that Constitution is putting are based on the consequences of freedom of speech and expression. For example, sovereignty. If certain freedom of speech and expression is threatening the sovereignty and security or contempt of court or public order or decency and morality, so all these things are based upon the consequences of freedom of speech and expression. They are not talking about the content of the freedom of speech and expression. So anything which is restricting freedom of speech and expression based upon their content is not under the Article 19 Clause 2. Second thing, government brought these rules through executive actions because they are amending the rules. And who is amending the rule? Government is amending the rule. So all the amendments are done by the government itself. So these comes under executive rules. But the fundamental right of speech and expression is under Constitution. So how come these executive action can abrogate constitutional rights? So there is a constitutional angle to this. Second is lacking clear definitions. Government in these rules have mentioned any fake, false or misleading information that is against any business of the government. So what is fake, what is false and what is misleading information is not there in the rules or any statute. Also, what is any business? Government is failed to define any business here, right? This is violating the Supreme Court's judgment. For example, Shreya Singhal case 2015. Supreme Court said, if you are restricting freedom of speech and expression, that restriction should not be abstract in nature, right? So if you are not clear with the definition of fake, false, and misleading information or any business of the government, this is abrogating the verdict of Supreme Court under Shreya Singhal case 2015. Also, the fact check unit are giving direction to the intermediaries. What are intermediaries? So let's understand this first. There are three stakeholders. One is source of information, another is consumer of information, and third is the medium between these two sources or these two entities. For example, if I am giving you one information, right? So I become the source of information. You are the consumer of information because you are consuming this thing. And the YouTube channel through which we are interacting, or the internet service provider through which we are getting this information, or through which we are getting these services, are called as intermediaries, right? So if government or fact check units are giving direction to these intermediaries, they have no other option but to brought down these information or these content, right? So there is a clause in these rules that who will decide the content to be false or fake, that is the government or fact check unit. And if they are giving direction to the intermediaries, they have to brought down all the information. So removal of information is also a concern. Third is petitioner are arguing that intermediaries only have illusion of choice once content is flagged by the government. If government is flagging certain content as fake or false, so they have to abide by these directions. So what is the verdict? There are two judges, Justice Gautam Patel and another is Neela Gokhale. Justice Patel was ruled in favor of the petitioner, while Justice Neela Gokhale disagreed and upheld the amendment, right? So that is why there was not unanimity in the judgment. The case will be placed before a third judge chosen by the Chief Justice of the Bombay High Court due to split verdict, right? What could be the way forward? Firstly, we have to provide certain kind of self-regulation in these cases. For social media intermediaries, for OTT platforms, we have to support self-regulation. They are capable enough to make certain self-regulation, right? Example of this, Twitter. In 2016 US presidential election, Twitter flagged many tweets given by Trump as a flagged content. They flagged various tweets by the Trump as a fake news. Also, such kind of provisions are there in Indian scenario, for example, Press Council of India. And this is a kind of self-regulatory authority to overlook the conducts of newspapers. So such type of self-regulation can be promoted in these cases for the intermediaries in case of social media or OTT platforms. Government and private sector should be work in consonance and they should adopt some cooperative strategy. For example, they can create a fact-checking unit which incorporates private sector as well as government sector. There are certain technological solutions that can flag the misinformation or fake information, right? Also, the most important aspect is raising public awareness. Without public awareness, all the fact-check units will not be effective. Why? Because if we are not sensitizing people, if we are not giving public awareness, it will not be helpful. People can bypass all the actions, people can bypass all the laws, and they can use dark web or darknet. So that is why people awareness is important. Okay, let's move to another article. Let's discuss another article which talks about communalism can't be counted with soft Hindutva, says Pinarayi Vijayan. This whole article is political in nature, but one topic, that is communalism, is important for us from UPSC point of view. So in GS paper 1, there is a topic communalism, which is important for exam. Let's understand the importance of this topic from UPSC previous year question. In 2018, UPSC asked this question: communalism arises either due to power struggle or relative deprivation. Argue by giving suitable illustrations. So that is why this article and this whole topic is important. First, what is communalism? See, anything which has suffix ISM, it means it's an ideology, right? So communalism is also an ideology, specifically political ideology, right? So it's a political ideology or practice which emphasizes loyalty, identity, and interest of a particular religion, community, or any ethnic group over broader inclusive national or societal concern. So let's suppose this is a society. The society is divided into multiple segments of society, and if a people have more loyalty towards a particular segment of the society vis-a-vis the national or social interest, so that is called as communalism or communal ideology, right? It promotes distinct group identity, and it also fosters a sense of unity among members of that particular section of the society, right? This could potentially lead to division or conflicts. So let's understand the history of communalism in India. Okay, so any ideology or any extremist or divisive political ideology, it always start with resource competition. For example, let's suppose this is a society, right? And many people are there and they are competing for limited resources. So after some time, what will happen? Some will get advantageous position and some will lag behind, right? So some will get advantageous position and some people will lag behind, right? Okay. In this case, both set of people will try to garner help of people on the basis of their cultural markers. What is this cultural marker? For example, language, for example, religion, ethnicity, etc. So they will try to garner help from other people on the basis of cultural marker, and that is how they will create some collective consciousness. So for example, A, B, C, and D, there are 4 types of segments of the society in a particular society. So if people belonging to A cultural marker, they will garner help from members of that community A. So it will create some collective conscience between or among the people of A community, right? Similarly with B, C, and D, right? Later, what will happen? They feel or they believe that, or they started believing that their secular interests, for example, economic interest, political interest, educational interests, are different from the other group, right? So let's suppose A community, they start believing, they start creating collective conscience, and now they are believing that their secular interest is different from that of B, right? Later on, these secular interests will become antagonistic to each other. For example, people or members of A community will feel that their secular interest is not only different from the segment B, but also antagonistic to segment B. So this is how a communal ideology or any extremist political ideology will build. That is how any communal ideology or any extremist ideology will build. So it starts with resource competition. It may be political resource, it may be cultural resource, it may be economic resource. They start with resource competition. They will build their collective conscience. Later, these collective conscience will feel that their secular interests are different from others, and then they will start believing that their secular interests are not just different, but they are antagonistic to other communities. So this is how we see development of communal or any extremist ideology. So according to Bipin Chandra, there are three phases of communalism in pre-independence India, right? First is communal consciousness. So same processes originated mainly in the second half of 19th century due to the socio-religious reform movement, not aimed against a particular community, aimed to bring certain positive changes, right? Then liberal communalism, particular group of people or community starts believing that their political, economic, social and religious interests are different. Third, extremist communalism, which says group of people start believing their interests are not only different but divergent or antagonistic to each other, right? So what are the factors that are contributing to communalism in India? Let's discuss this. Firstly, historical factors. There is a sociologist, his name is T.N. Madan. This name is not important for GS point of view, but just to make a clarity, T.N. Madan argued that there are two kinds of religion in India. One is Indic religion and another is non-Indic religion. For example, Indic, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. And for non-Indic, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Christianity, etc. And all of these Indic religion have their own socio-political and economic context when they emerged. Similarly, these non-Indic religion, when they emerge, they have different set of socio-economic and political context. And that is why they had different socio-economic and political compulsions. For example, for Indic religion, cow had certain objective interest when they emerged in Indian subcontinent, and that is why cow became sacred to them. But for these non-Indic religion, cow is not sacred and it's as profane as a computer, right? Because they did not have any objective interest, but cow did not have any kind of objective interest to them, right? So that is why it was not sacred for them, it was profane for them, right? As profane as a computer, right? It creates conflict of interest between these two communities because of their different socio-economic and political context, right? Secondly, these differences were harnessed by or exploited by British colonial regime or British colonialists. How? They started dividing these people on the basis of religion, on the basis of caste, etc. And they tried to rule over them. So this divide and rule policy is also a major factor behind communalism in India. And we see today also colonial legacy is carried forward, right? Second reason is against modernity. See, modernity always equated with rationality, or you can also say with empiricism. What is empiricism? The thing that you can verify with the help of your senses is the only true. Okay. So religion cannot be verified through senses, right? For example, we cannot touch religion or we cannot touch God, we cannot see God. So that is why it's not having any empirical back. In this case, it is against religion. It becomes against religion. So let's suppose if we draw a timeline, initially there is a lot of religiosity, and when modernity came to society, religiosity got decreased, right? But later on, what we find, modernity comes up with its own set of problems. So modernity, it has its own set of problems. Also, because of this rationality, because of this empiricism, which is antagonistic to religion, now the functions which were performed by religion is now not being performed in the society. For example, emotional attachment is now being replaced by rationality or instrumental rationality, right? So it has its own sort of problems, and now the functions which were performed by religion are now not being performed, right? So it is causing a sentiment against modernity, right? This sentiment against modernity is also a cause of communalism, cause of religious fanaticism in India, right? Also, third point is transitional society. India is a transitional society. How? We are not traditional, we are not totally modern, we are in between these two polar opposite phases of the society. We are not completely traditional, we are not completely modern. So some people are a little bit more modern than other people. So people have traditional nature, people have certain modern nature. We are in between these traditionality and modernity, right? So that is why these cultural markers are not being replaced by modern secular ideologies completely, right? Next is demography and socio-economic factors. To understand this factor, let's compare Indian demography with US demography. USA has almost 76% of Christians and almost 15% of atheists, right? Which were earlier Christians. So they have common cultural background. When we compare this with the minorities in USA, almost 2 to 3% are Hindu and Muslims. So demographically, these Hindu and Muslims are nowhere comparable to the Christians or the Christian cultural background, right? In comparison to USA, when we see Indian demography, India has almost 80% Hindus and 15% Muslims, almost population, right? When we compare this 15% population of minority, we see they have a very strong voice and a strong political voice, to be very specific. They have very strong political voice against the majoritarian tendency of India or Indian majority, right? But in this case, USA, they did not have any kind of strong voice against the majoritarian tendency. Apart from that, when you see Sachar committee, it says that Muslim population in India is having a very low socio-economic development, right? And because of which they are more prone towards any communal ideology. On comparison to this Hindu and Muslim population in US, they are majorly middle class, they are literate, and they are career-oriented people. That is why they are not prone towards any communal ideology, right? Next is geopolitical factors. India is surrounded by communal and theological countries or nation states. For example, Pakistan. For example, Nepal. For example, Bangladesh. And to some extent, Sri Lanka as well. These countries are inducing communal ideologies in India. So that is why this geopolitical factor is also important in making Indian community a communal community. There's also political factors. For example, sometimes state intervene in the matter of religion, right? For example, triple talaq case. For example, khap panchayat, right? So these interferences by the state is also invoking or provoking communalism in India, right? Also, there is no clear-cut demarcation between state and religion in India. For example, if we compare with Western countries, there's a clear-cut demarcation. State will not enter into religion. Religion will not enter into state affair. But in India, there is no clear-cut demarcation. Also, there is no clear-cut definition of secularism in India. There are multiple definitions of secularism and secularization, and that is why it is creating confusion, right? And lastly, technology. In previous topic as well, we discussed the importance of fake news, or not just importance, repercussion of fake news. These fake news, which are backed by some communal interests, are also creating communalism in India, right? Let's see some major communal incidences in India. Partition, which was most devastating. Riots in 1960s in eastern India. riots in Ahmedabad in 1969 and other subsequent decades, anti-Sikh riots in 1984, Babri Masjid demolition 1992, communal violence in Gujarat in 2002, subsequent incidents. Now, how to counter these communalism in India, right? Firstly, we have to imbibe sensitivity among our people, right? This is the most important aspect. Apart from that, we have to make our citizenry more accountable, more developed, and more empowered, right? Apart from that, legal and judicial measures can also be taken. We need to reform criminal justice system so that we can tackle any communal issues directly. We need to increase minority representation in our government, in our policing system, so that there is less stereotype vis-a-vis minority communities in India. We have to build some specialized units so that they can tackle communalism. Legislation, Communal Violence Prevention, Control and Rehabilitation Bill 2005 should be enacted. Education and community building is important, and that process should be value oriented. We need to change our education system. We need to mold our education system with ethical framework, right? We have to engage our civil society so that they can empower people, so that they can empower citizens to protect themselves from any communal incidences, right? Also, minority welfare and social integration is also important. We have to have some targeted schemes. Also, National Foundation for Communal Harmony should be strengthened so that we can proactively support any kind of rehabilitation. So this was all about the communalism. So the next article is The Great Indian Internet Shutdown, How Access to the World Wide Web is Curtailed. This article talks about the constitutional issues which are created because of shutting down of internet in various instances. How this is relevant for UPSC is restriction on internet freedom, and Supreme Court observation is important for our UPSC from UPSC syllabus GS paper 2 point of view, fundamental rights and governance. Let's understand the importance of this whole topic through previous year question. In 2016, UPSC asked this question: use of internet and social media by non-state actors for subversive activities is a major security concern. How have these been misused in the recent past? Suggest effective guidelines to curb the above threat, right? So let's understand the context first. See, in earlier, Supreme Court has given certain guidelines, and to avoid any kind of judicial scrutiny on the basis of that guideline or that direction, what bureaucrats are doing nowadays, they are shutting down the internet, but they are not publishing the instructions on these shutting down of internet publicly, right? So they are doing the things, but they are making themselves out of, or they are preventing or protecting themselves out of any judicial scrutiny, right? So that is why Supreme Court observed that reviewing internet suspension are not meant to be kept in cupboard, giving 2 weeks to the Jammu Kashmir administration to take instruction on making it public. That is, they have shut it down, the internet in Jammu and Kashmir, after the letter informed the court that there was no requirement to place these orders in public domain, right? Let's understand the background first. There was a case, Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India case. Under this, Supreme Court directed executive to public the orders of imposing internet shutdown, and this has been made mandatory by the Supreme Court. Okay, but currently what they are doing, they are not publishing all the orders in the public domain, and they are just letting down the shutdown of the internet, right? So it is creating some constitutional and legal issues. What are those legal and constitutional issues? Let's discuss this. Supreme Court, in this particular case, Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India, made it clear that right to internet is a fundamental right under Article 19. And if there is any abrogation of this article, the people or the victim can go to Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution, right? But if governments or bureaucrats are not publishing all the internet shutdowns in public domain, so they cannot go to the Supreme Court or higher court under Article 32, right? So that is why it is creating, or the judiciary is obligating state to publish all the orders in public domain, right? State had an obligation to disclose information in order to satisfy right to remedy as established in Article 32 of the Indian Constitution, right? So this is the remedy part, but there is also some ramification of shutting down the internet. For example, economic issues, political issues, and social issues. How? See, according to Internet Freedom Foundation, this is a NGO and which is working for internet freedom in India, they calculated the outcomes of internet in economic terms, and they said globally whatever loss that our global community has faced because of internet shutdown, 70% out of them was coming from India only. So that means 70% loss is bearing by Indian people itself, right? Secondly, they calculated in terms of economic data, and they said that almost $2.8 billion was lost for Indian economy, or Indian economy suffered this much of loss because of this internet shutdown, right? So it was economic loss bear by Indian people or Indian citizens. There is also political loss. This fundamental right of right to internet is a part of Article 19, right? So if it is a part of Article 19 and without any reasonable restriction, you are prohibiting people to use this right or enjoy this right. So this is curtailing their political freedom. What about social? Internet nowadays become important pillar for skill development, education, and even for health. So that is why if you are curtailing right to internet, it is also curtailing their social rights, right? So all these things are getting violated because of this shutting down of internet. Any restriction on internet access by the government must be proportionate. It must be lawful. It must be limited. It must be temporary provision. It should not be all-time provision that you are completely banning internet. You are completely shutting down internet in any circumstance. So this should be temporary. This should be lawful, and there should be proportionality while you are banning the internet or while you are shutting down the internet, right? Keeping this thing in mind, test of necessity and proportionality as safeguards, state can restrict telecom services with adherence to Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita, IT Act 2000 and Telegraph Act, that is now replaced by new Telecommunication Act, right? Also, the imposition of Section 144 of CRPC could not be used to suppress legitimate expression and are subject to and should be subject to judicial scrutiny. So these arguments are put up by the article itself. So what could be the way forward? According to recent report by US Digital Rights Advocacy Group, India is becoming internet shutdown capital of the world, right? This notion should be rejected. This notion should be discarded. And the compliance with Supreme Court's order can fulfill digital India's potential, right? So the next article is scientists fuse brain-like tissue with electronics to make computer. Artificial intelligence. What is the purpose of artificial intelligence? To mimic human brain. We are creating a system, a digital system, which are mimicking human brain. It is working as if human brain is working. How it is being performed? These artificial intelligence, so far, so now, it is made up of artificial neural networks. What is artificial neural networks? They are set of nodes, and with the help of certain algorithms and data or information, they are mimicking the actual human brain, right? So these are set of nodes, set of electronic chips, which along with certain algorithm and data, they are mimicking human brain, right? But there is a difference between human brain and these artificial neural networks. How? They are working with the help of electrochemical energy, and they are using electric energy, right? They are made up of neurons. What are neurons? Neurons are fundamental brain cells, and they are working on nodes or electronic chips that are made up of silicon chips or transistor, etc., etc. So that is why human brain functioning is more efficient than these artificial neural networks. Also, these are faster than the artificial neural networks. Now, what scientists are doing, they are fusing these two things, and they are creating a new system that is brain-aware, and that is discussed in this article. Why this is important? Artificial intelligence and biotechnology, and in GS paper 3, awareness in the field of IT, space, computers, robotics, nanotechnology, biotechnology is in UPSC syllabus, right? Let's understand the importance of this whole concept from UPSC previous year question point of view. 2020 UPSC asked this question: with the present state of development, artificial intelligence can effectively do which of the following, right? Bring down electricity consumption in industrial unit. Possibility, yes. Create meaningful short stories and songs that we are witnessing. Disease diagnosis, yes, possibility. Text to speech conversation, yes, possible. Wireless transmission of electrical energy, this is also possible with the help of artificial intelligence. So let's understand the context. Researchers from Indiana University, remembering name of university is not important, but just to give a context, University of Cincinnati and the University of Florida have developed an organized neural network system. That is a fusion of artificial neural network system and human neurons, right? And they named it as BrainAware. Okay. Scientists created the BrainAware by combining living brain cells, and that brain cells they have developed in lab with the help of pluripotent stem cells. These pluripotent stem cells are type of stem cells that can be converted into almost all forms of developed body organelles, right? This system can recognize voices and solve complex math problems, showcasing potential for biocomputing. Biocomputing is conversing biology with computer technology. So if we are combining biology with computer, that is biocomputing. What are neural networks? Neural networks are subset of machine learning that teach computers to process data in a way that's inspired by human brain, that we have already seen, that it is connected or it is created with the help of certain interconnected nodes with the help of certain algorithms and data, right? Also known as artificial neural networks or simulated neural networks, made using silicon chips, that these nodes are made up of silicon chips, contains transistors and other electronic components that are arranged in complex way to mimic the structure and function of human brain, but they are not as efficient as human brain, right? So we came up to this organized neural networks. Living brain cells are integrated with electronic systems. So we are diffusing these two things, these two systems, living brain cells that are made up with the help of pluripotent cells in lab, and we are fusing these two systems to create brainware cultivated from human pluripotent stem cells that we have discussed. Unlike conventional artificial neural network made of silicon, organoid neural networks operate through the dynamic interactions of living neurons. So let's have a comparison between human brain and traditional ANN, and then we can compare this human brain with organoid neural networks. Let me give a data. If a task is performed by human brain cells and it takes 20 watt, same task will be performed by artificial or traditional artificial neural networks with the help of 40 megawatt. So this much efficiency human brain is showing. Okay, so that is why we need such type of neural networks. So these are the three aspects under which we are comparing these two systems. First is integrated memory and processing. Human brain is functioning in such a fashion that memory as well as the data processing are done in an integrated fashion, right? But what about ANN or artificial neural network? Storage is different aspect and processing is different aspect. For example, in a common computer, CPU is there. This is a processing unit, central processing unit, and RAM is there. It's a memory unit, right? So both are different. Similarly, ANN is also separating memory and the processing, but human brain is integrating both the processes, and that is why it is more efficient. Also, billions of neurons we have seen. It's a basic unit, basic brain cells or fundamental unit of brain cells, and trillions of synapses. Synapses is connecting two neurons working simultaneously. So brain cells or brain is performing in such a fashion that it can perform multiple billions of work parallelly, simultaneously. But in terms of ANN, these data processing or the works are done by ANN in sequentially format. For example, so let's suppose there are 10 works that are to be performed, right? Brain cells can perform all these 10 works parallelly, but ANN will do one by one or sequentially, right? So all these works will be performed sequentially in terms of traditional ANN, right? Also, we have already seen this, that brain cells are using electrochemical impulses, and that is more efficient than electronic signals that are being used by traditional ANN. So this was all about the new research which was going on in terms of organoid neural networks. So the last topic for today's discussion is why bird flu deaths of Antarctic penguins is flashing danger sign. So this article talks about three basic things which are important for prelims examination. One is highly pathogenic avian influenza virus, that is H5N1. Second is a species named as penguins. And third is sea lion island of Falkland Island, right? Why this is important? Because species in news, environment and ecology is in prelims examination, or it's important for prelims examination. Let's understand the importance of this topic through a previous year question. H1N1 virus, they asked this question in 2015, that H1N1 virus is sometimes mentioned in the news with reference to which of the following diseases. So mostly it's the avian influenza. Okay, so let's understand the context first. Highly lethal form of bird flu, H5N1. So what is H and N connotes here? H stands for hemagglutinin and N stands for neuraminidase. Okay, so these are protein types. These are types of protein, right? There are 16 hemagglutinin and there are 9 kinds of neuraminidase, right? So combination of these two proteins is present in virus, and that is how we no or scientists name the viruses, right? And it has been detected in Antarctic penguins for the first time. And that is why it is creating a very high threats for the existence of Antarctic penguins, because they are not exposed to these kind of viruses earlier, right? Okay. So this detection of flu in Antarctic penguins, these penguins, mainly Gentoo penguins, they are known as Gentoo penguins on Sea Lion Island, that we will be discussing in a couple of minutes. This is the first instance of this highly pathogenic bird flu, and that is why they are exposed to these viruses for the first time, and that is why it's creating a very high chance of threat to their existence, right? And they are facing mass mortalities. Let's discuss vulnerability or other vulnerabilities created by H5N1 to the penguins. See, they are already vulnerable towards climate change, pollution, and commercial fishing, right? And they have a very large and crowded breeding colonies, and that is why it makes them more vulnerable towards rapid spread of these viruses, right? Also, they have a very little immunity towards the H5N1 virus. Okay, let's discuss wider concern for Antarctic ecosystem. This Antarctic ecosystem is a critical breeding territory for over 100 million birds, seals, sea lions, and other marine mammals. If at all this virus is getting spread faster, then it will impact the entire ecosystem, right? Also, these virus also affecting seas and sea lions. So that is how we can see these viruses are getting spread to other mammals as well, right? What are Gentoo penguins? They are the fastest of any other diving bird. They primarily feed on crustaceans, fish, and squid. Their IUCN status is least concern. Let's have information with respect to Falkland Island. Falkland Island is a British territory, overseas British territory, and it is in the southern hemisphere near South America, right? So the Falkland Island are a remote South Atlantic archipelago with rugged terrain and cliff-lined coast. Its hundreds of islands and islets are home to sheep farms and abundant bird life. So we have discussed all the important articles. Let's solve some practice questions. So first question, consider the following statements. H5N1 is a type of bird flu which does not affect human. That is incorrect. It affects humans. So this statement is incorrect. Antarctic penguins, especially Gentoo penguins, have special immunity against H5N1 flu. We have seen that these penguins are very new to this kind of exposure. So they haven't developed any kind of immunity vis-a-vis H5N1 flu. So this statement is also incorrect. So D would be the correct answer. Next question is, consider the following statements. In Anuradha Bhasin versus Union of India case, the Supreme Court held that judicial scrutiny over the orders of internet shutdown by state is restricted. No. Judicial scrutiny is important and is above the directions or the orders of the state. So this statement is incorrect. The right to information through internet is a part of the right to freedom of speech and expression guaranteed by Article 19. So this statement is correct. Answer would be B part. Consider the following statements regarding the differences between organoid neural networks and artificial neural networks. ONNs are more efficient, energy efficient than ANN due to their integrated memory and processing functioning. That is correct. ANNs excel in parallel processing of complex tasks where ONN rely on sequential data processing. In fact, we have swiped these two, right? So ONN excel in parallel processing and ANN rely on sequential data processing. So this statement is incorrect. Answer would be A part. Next question, with the current advancements, neural networks can effectively perform which of the following? Medical diagnosis from scans, correct. Weather forecasting, yes, correct. Signature authentication, correct. Defense pattern recognition, correct. Stock market analysis, correct. So this kind of question which talks about the potential So all are the potential uses and application of neural networks. So all the statements are correct. Answer would be D. Next question. Consider the following statements regarding IT Act in India. Safe harbor provision is accorded to intermediaries and consumer, not to consumers, only to intermediaries, and that too in a specific circumstances. As per 2023 amendment to the IT rules, fact check units will be created by Ministry of Home Affairs. That is incorrect. MIT will be creating fact check units. Okay. So which of the following above statements are incorrect? Both are incorrect. So answer would be C part. Let's solve some means practice question. Delineate the reasons for communalism in India. So we have already discussed about communalism a lot. So introduction, we have to start with the communalism, right? Because this is the central keyword of the whole question. So as far as introduction is concerned, we can start with defining communalism, right? Then in the body part, we have to delineate the reasons for communalism. There are multiple reasons. Is there any connection between structure of Indian society and communalism in India? So we have already discussed the objective factors under which structure of Indian society is also of reason for communalism in India. Critically analyze and give remedial measures to reduce their occurrence. Right. So if UPSC is asking critically analyze, so for each factor you have to give pro argument and against argument, right? So if structure is becoming cause for communalism, so you have to also explain how these structure or this structure is also negating communalism in India, right? And give remedial measures. That means you have to give all the measures that are possible to curb the communalism or menace related with the communalism, right? So introduction, define communalism. Body, we have discussed the objective factors which are causing communalism in India, right? And then give remedial measures. Remember, always in such type of questions, always try to conclude with a positive note, right? So mention how Indian societal values and constitutional principles have all the features to achieve communal harmony in India, right? So this is how we can conclude our today's discussion. If you like our initiative, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you so much.